Hello my lovelies, welcome back to my channel. I'm the City Witch and today I have a new book review for you guys. Before I begin, I just want to talk you through how I do my book reviews. So I will list the positives and negatives of this book. I'll talk to you a little bit about the author and their writing style and the chapters and subjects they covered within the book. If there are any spells, rituals and exercises, I will mention those as well, and how I personally found them when I worked through them, because I do tend to do them when I read a book. And I'll let you know whether this book is good for a beginner practitioner or something that's better suited for a more advanced practitioner. Then I will score the book at the end of the review, letting you know from 1 to 10 how good it is and if it's worth the money or not. So let's begin. So the book review we're doing is for Fang, Blood and Bone, A Primal Guide to Animal Magic by Lupa. This is a self-published book. First impressions is I really like the aesthetic in the front cover. It's quite lovely. But that's where it ends, because the back is not particularly great. First of all, the mistake there, the use of the word magic. They've used the wrong word there. It should be magic with a K. So, Create Wild Magic, Fang, Blood and Bone is like no other book on animal magic. Originally published in 2006, this new edition of Lupa's first book is updated and annotated to reflect over a decade of additional experience. While covering the more common topics such as animal spirits and familiars, Lupa also delves into such controversial realms as shape-shifting, the magical and ritual use of animal parts, and includes path workings for meeting your animal spirits, among other ritual ideas. Aimed at magical practitioners, both new and advanced, Fang and Blood and Bone is a must for anyone interested in this popular subject. So this book is obviously on the subject of animal magic and working with animals in your spiritual practice. I personally read this book in, I think I was reading another book at the time, so it took me about 6 days, but I think if I'd have concentrated on only this book, I could have read it in a day, maybe 2 days. It's not difficult to read and it flows quite nicely. The book itself was originally published in 2006, but was updated in 2020. So this is the updated version of this book, so the second edition. So we have some copyright information there, and then it tells me that the artwork and cover design was by Lupa. It does mention interior layout, photos and artwork is also by Lupa. However, there is no artwork in this book at all, so I don't know why that was on there. The editor was Tyler Elwood, and there is a website to be able to contact and learn more about the author as well. Now, as stated, it's a self-published book, so please bear that in mind. There was a few spelling mistakes, and there was also terminology on this which was a little bit toxic, outdated and incorrect. However, during the update in 2020, the author recognised that there was some outdated terminology, a little bit of cultural appropriation. There was things that she'd mentioned and talked about in the book that she no longer does and no longer supports, and she does leave footnotes letting you know. Now, in my opinion, it would have been nice for a full overhaul of the book and for her to remove everything that was bad and to include new terminology, correct and update everything, and just make this a really nice smooth finish. However, she doesn't do that. She just gives a footnote. She does issue apologies throughout the book, letting you know she doesn't use that word anymore, that terminology, or that's incorrect, or that's slightly toxic and why. So she does do that and apologise. However, I can only assume that she just didn't have the money or the funds available to be able to update this book properly, hence the footnotes. So just bear that in mind when you're reading it, guys, because it can be a little bit triggering, a little bit annoying, especially for an advanced practitioner who knows that's incorrect or wrong. So there are going to be a few annoyances as you go on through the book. There was also a couple of spelling mistakes and grammar errors, but they were all minor things, guys, nothing major to worry about. You get a Dear Reader note here, and then you get your dedication for 2020 and your original 2006 acknowledgements. Then we get a list of other books by Lupa. Now, I will say I've never read any of her other books. This was the very, very first one, but now I've finished this and read it, I do want to read some of her others and see what her journey has been like through animal magic. So the next book she wrote was called DIY Animism, A Personal Guide to Animal Spirits. The next one was Skin Spirits, Animal Parts in Spiritual and Magical Practice. So that one I think could be really interesting. That one's published in 2009 and updated in 2020 to match this one. Then she wrote New Paths to Animal Spirits, 3 Creative Models of Animal Spirit Work. That was printed in 2012 and updated in 2020. She also wrote one on working with plants, so plants and fungus totems, connecting with spirits of field, forest and garden. Not sure if I'm going to get that one or not. That one was a Llewellyn published, so not a self-published, so interesting. And then we have Skull Scrying, Animal Skulls in Divination Practice. That was printed in 2015 and was a self-publish. And I must say, I am interested in reading that one because that sounds like it could be fascinating. And then Nature Spirituality from the Ground Up, Connecting with Spirits in Your Local Ecosystem. So that one was printed by Llewellyn in 2016. And that one's about connecting to local spirits. So if you're a practitioner who's only just walking the path of spirits, traveling over the hedge and learning how to travel to other realms, commune with other spirits and build your spirit ally team, then that could be a really good book for you. She also then designed a tarot deck called the Tarot of Bones decking guidebook, and that was printed in 2017 and it was a self-publish. And then we have Pocket Osteomancy, a simple bone divination set, published in 2018. I do have an osteomancy set, and there aren't that many books out there on the subject, guys, so if you can get hold of that one, that could be really interesting for little tips and tricks on how to work with your bones. And then the last book, which I really absolutely do want to get, that I think would be wonderful for those of you out there that's into creepy things and, you know, dead things, is a book called Vulture Culture 101, a book for people who like dead things. And that was published in 2019, so a fairly recent book. So if you're somebody that likes to use bones in your practice, like this one I have here, this one is a fox femur, and you want to know, how do I get it this clean, this white, this beautiful looking bone, then you're going to need to know how. And again, there aren't that many books out on the subject. So that book, Vulture Culture, teaches you about collecting carcasses, roadkill and bones from the wild, how to do it in a safe, sanitary way, how to clean them properly, how to ritually bless them, work with the animal spirit that they're from, identifying some of them as well. If you find fur, snake skin, things like that, she teaches you what you can turn them into, how you can use them. She shows you in that book as well how to create things from them, such as a fur bag or a snakeskin belt, things like that, how to work with the leathers, the skins, the hides. So if that's something you're interested in, or you like taxidermy, or if you simply just want to know how to clean your bones properly without using bleach, because don't use bleach, guys, that's incorrect. You should be using peroxide. This book will teach you all about it. So I think that one's going to be a fascinating book, and I'm really looking forward to getting hold of it and giving it a read. So then that takes me to the table of contents. So I'm going to quickly go over the table of contents and then talk to you about the positives and then the negatives of the book. So as I say, we have our 2006 introduction and then our 2020 updated introduction. Chapter 1 is Archetypical Animal Spirits. Chapter 2 is Familiars. Chapter 3, Animal-Based Evocation and Invocation. Chapter 4, Creating Animals in Magical Practice. Chapter 5, Shapeshifting. Chapter 6, Working with Animal Parts. And Chapter 7, Animal Sacrifice. And then there is an afterword and then some appendices at the back of the book, which covers guided animal spirit meditation, simple divination techniques, how to make a fur pouch. So this is where she touches on connecting this book to Vulture Culture, and she tells you the techniques to do that and more are contained within Vulture Culture 101. And then she ends with animal-based non-profits. So these are organizations that help protect animals, nature and wildlife. You know, they protect endangered species. She talks to you about zoos and their breeding programs and placing animals back into the wild, about donating your time and energy into helping these organizations and where you can go to do that if that's something you're interested in. And for some of you out there who work quite closely with a deity where many animals are sacred to them, that could be really handy information to have. So I thought that was a really nice touch. So as an example, if you work with Artemis, where, you know, she's known as the huntress, but all animals are sacred to her, that could be really good information if you really want to get into working with more bigger creatures like, you know, deer and lions and tigers and things like that, boars and, you know, whatever. So that will give you all that information. And as I say, I thought that was a wonderful touch to the book. Then there's a glossary and a bibliography. So working through the book. So chapter 1, archetypical animal spirits. So this was kind of your introduction into animal magic, and this is where she uses incorrect terminology the most, and that's where you'll see a lot of footnotes correcting that, saying she no longer believes in that, she knows that's incorrect, her journeys took her down a different route, and that isn't something that's part of her practice anymore. So you'll get a lot of footnotes during that chapter. She gives you a breakdown on the different types of animals and what they represent in your life. So you'll have what they call permanent totems. So these are animals that come into your life, that remain in your life, and you should discover up to 8 of them, she says. Now, I personally think that it's 9, because I know of an animal in particular that she did not mention in her book, and it's called your soul animal. Your soul animal is the animal spirit family you were born into at the moment of your conception. For me, that is the wolf. The wolf represents my soul, my energy, my magic, my practice, and is my most powerful animal ally. She doesn't mention that at all, so it leads me to believe that wasn't something she discovered at that point of writing this book. And then in 2020, even though she updated the book, it may be information that she just simply missed out or had forgotten to edit in. So when she talks about having 8 of these totems, I see 9 because of the soul animal family that you should have as well. And then your permanent totems will rule over different aspects and energies of your life. She mentions how you will get some animal spirits that will come into your life to help you with a specific task. She equates this a lot to working with angels, and how sometimes a certain angel or a certain deity will pop into your life. They want to help you with something quite major that's going on, such as, personal grief or loss, a breakup, or, you're trying to change careers. So, a spirit will come in to aid with that. And then when you accomplish that and you're well and truly on your path and you don't need them anymore, they say goodbye to you and they fade out of your life and disappear. So they're passing through spirits. And then she also mentions another type, which is working with spirit allies that you build a relationship with, like you would with a deity, where you can call them in and out of your practice in spells and rituals. You can meditate with them, and you can go on spiritual journeys with them to other realms and things. And that's something not many people talk about, because you assume that when you build a bond with, say, a totem, so say you build a bond with a tiger, that you must always refer to the tiger or only your totems that you have, instead of say, oh, a lion would be better suited to this, but I have a tiger. Most people think you can't work with a lion or, other animals, and that's incorrect. So she talks about that a lot and really debunks a lot of the myths out there, and that was really good information. Then we go on to chapter 2, which was familiars. And for me, guys, this was a major negative. It's a big no-no, and it's a complete waste of time and space in this book. And she should not have included that chapter at all, or she should have fully updated it, because it's all incorrect. So for any beginners that are thinking, oh, I might get this, it's a, great introduction, ignore that chapter on familiars, because it was all incorrect information. She tells you that a familiar is your pet. And I know there's a lot of people that are watching this going, well, why can't it be my pet? And actually, if you really do your research, guys, and it takes a little bit of time to do it, you will actually realize what a familiar actually is. A witch's familiar is a entity, a creature that is ethereal, not of this realm, that comes into the witch's life to aid the witch and be one of your most powerful allies in the magical world. You can send them out to do research for you, to carry out spell work for you, to collect information, to spy on people. Their kind of uses is almost limitless. And how you acquire a true witch's familiar is as follows. You either get gifted one by a deity, or you are given one, it's passed down to you by another witch. Now, there is a third, more modern way. Now, obviously, traditionally you would either be given one by, as say a deity, or an elder in your family, such as, a dying grandmother or, grandfather is about to pass away, and they want to make sure their familiar is well taken care of. They will pass it on to a new generation of witch, and that familiar will become yours. Thus the passing down of the familiar. The familiar stays with a family bloodline for an extremely long time. Now, over the years, that's not common practice anymore. And what's been happening is witches have been passing away, and then the familiars have basically been turfed out and become homeless, which is a shame. And these familiars are just wandering around local areas and, have no home. So you can actually now perform a ritual to put out a call in your local area to say, hi, I'm a witch, I'm looking for an animal familiar, or I'm looking for a witch's familiar, and I'm interested in building a bond with you. anybody out there listening kind of thing. So that's kind of what happens. Now, the reason here that, you know, people mix pets with what a familiar is because traditionally a familiar would take on the disguise of an animal. So you'll hear people use the term animal familiar, and what they mean is my familiar pretends to be an animal, it's disguised as an animal. And this was common to protect the witch from, you know, people who were, you know, not into witchcraft, because you have to think back to medieval times when witches were, you know, considered to be evil. You know, the Bible was saying kill them, and, you know, and all that jazz. So a familiar will disguise themselves as an animal that you would commonly see back in the day, like a cat, a dog, a toad, or whatever, and pretend to be that animal, but they are not that animal. It is a disguise. So she completely gets this wrong by telling you your pet is your familiar, you know, that you can work with any animal ally and turn it into a familiar, and all of that is complete and utter hogwash and rubbish and just really incorrect, guys. So please do not read that information and take it as gospel. It's wrong. Your animal pet absolutely has a wonderful place in your magical practice, but it is a pet. And it can be used in spells. You can use your dog's fur, you know, teeth or claws that they shed. You know, you can, you know, have your cat in your space and it can add to your power and your rituals. Absolutely. There are ways to incorporate your pets in your magical practice for sure. And they represent great, powerful allies to the witch, but they are not the same as what a familiar is. And modern witches keep getting this wrong, and they keep mixing up the terminology. And again, this practitioner did exactly the same thing and didn't correct herself even after 15 years. So that was a terrible chapter. It had me rolling my eyes a lot and had me shouting at the book a lot as well, and just getting really angry with it, to be honest. If you want to know how to get a proper familiar, a witch's familiar, and you're wondering where can I get good information, a book I highly recommend is called The Crooked Path by Kilden. And that book is amazing, and it's traditional English witchcraft, which is where the concept of familiars comes from. And he gives you the full mythology around them, the correct information, tells you, again, what I've just told you, that it's not your pet, and how to acquire one traditionally. And then, of course, if you are a solitary practitioner and don't have any witches that can gift you a familiar, he gives you a full ritual on how to do so, and successfully. I know a lot of people who've used that ritual who have acquired familiars as a result. So instead, choose to get that book, guys, if you want to go down that route. Now, moving on to chapter 3, animal-based invocation and invocation. So this was a fantastic chapter and probably one of my favorites in the book. She talks about externally working with animals and then internally working with them. She talks a lot about, you know, having their energy in your aura, taking on, say, the sight of an eagle, the speed of a cheetah, you know, and incorporating their energies and their medicine and their healing techniques into your practice, externally and physically within you, and how to build your connections and bonds with the animals in doing so. That was absolutely a brilliant chapter, and, you know, was kind of golden actually, and really made up for the mistake of the familiar chapter in chapter 2. Then we move on to chapter 4, creating animals in magical practice. Now, are there any D&D lovers out there? Because honestly, that chapter, again, gold, and you're going to love it. So if you do play D&D, Dungeons and Dragons, you will have a character sheet, and you'll know where I'm going with this. So by creating an animal in your practice, so this is about creating an entity, a creature for your practice. So you're building and making it, and you're birthing it into existence, and then you of course need to keep it alive. So you need to consider things like how many animals you're going to incorporate into it to make it. So are you going to do 2 animals, 3 animals, 4 animals? You know, what's it going to look like? How big is it, or how small is it? You know, what strengths and weaknesses does it have? You know, where does it live? What environments does it thrive in? You know, what environments does it suffer and struggle in? Can it fly? Can it teleport? What magical abilities does it have? You know, how powerful is it? What does it feed on? Can it procreate? You know, all of those things. And you can use a character sheet from D&D to write all of that down. There obviously will be sections that are not relevant, such as weapons. You know, you might want to, for weapons instead, change that to, I don't know, defensive techniques, kind of like how the chameleon can change colour, you know, or the, you know, lion can blend in with the, you know, the reeds and the grass because it's golden, you know. So there might be certain things you do incorporate in that, you know, and you consider that to be a weapon of sorts. You know, for example, slugs will squirt acid to protect themselves from birds attacking them. You know, certain creatures are born poisonous, you know. Other creatures, you know, like the gecko, can break off tails and legs to escape danger. So you might put that in as a type of weapon, I guess, or, you know, some special ability. So there will be sections on the sheet you won't use, but I actually did this and, you know, it was really quite fun to do and I absolutely recommend it. And then when you're done, she walks you through how to then create and bring that creature into existence and use it in your magical practice, either temporarily or permanently. And then if you make a temporary creature, how to then make it permanent if you like it and you don't want to see it die. Because most of the time when you create an entity, when you get into entity work, you give it a time scale, and then at the end of that time scale, it will, you know, basically, you know, curl up and die, because that's the point, because it's done its job. You know, you don't want these creatures running around the world just free doing whatever they want, because you're responsible for them. And, you know, if you can't dedicate time and energy into feeding them and taking care of them, then you should have a time frame built into their magical creation so that they, you know, they will expire by a certain point. But say you like your creature and it's doing really well and you've built this bond to it, how to then you change that, and she teaches you how to do that. So again, those two chapters, absolutely amazing. And then we get on to chapter 5, shape shifting, and this was brilliant, and the stories she gave were fascinating. She walks you through all the different levels of shapeshifting. And this is something I've been talking about in my practice for a long time, and I've been teaching to my groups for a long time as well. And honestly, people raise an eyebrow at it because shapeshifting really isn't used that often, but you know, the amazing things you can do with it. Honestly, I do recommend learning how to shapeshift, guys, and consider adding it into your practice, because there are lots and lots of different ways you can incorporate it. So in shapeshifting, there are different stages. So you can shift emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and when you get all of those under control, you can also shift physically. Now, I'm not saying werewolf that you're going to transform into a wolf 100% and your skin's going to tear and blood and guts are going to fly around. Please ignore the movie rubbish. What I mean is, when you start to get so bonded with your animal that you're at the level where the animal starts to break through you physically, you will experience little things like your teeth perhaps getting sharper, the way you carry yourself and the way you move, your voice may even change, your eye colour may change. There'll be subtle changes in your body and other people will notice it. I myself, years ago, when I was teaching this, was displaying shape-shifting into my wolf, and actively 4 people witnessed my eyes change colour to that of a wolf. There were moments where, you know, my voice deepened and changed, my mannerisms, the way I behaved, you know, and as I worked more with shape-shifting into my wolf as well, there was massive changes in my personality. And there was things that I noticed about myself as well as a result that were not human, they were more animalistic. So she talks about her experiences, and when I read that, I was like, wow, I'm not the only one that went through this. I'm not alone and I'm not crazy, because there are other people that have experienced this as well. So that was a brilliant, fantastic chapter. And she also gives 2 excellent book recommendations, and I wish I'd have brought them downstairs to show you guys because I haven't read them yet. But there was a whole book on working with werewolf magic and then the werewolf pack mentality, written by a guy who talks about this and actually using shape-shifting techniques and wolf energy. So for those of you out there that are wolf lovers that really want to learn about shape-shifting and take it to that next level, that would be the book for you. And she does mention it in that chapter. If anyone wants to ask me what that book is, because I don't have it to hand and I can't tell you the title and the creator because I've literally just bought them, but if you do want to know, please leave me a comment and I will reply back and tell you the name of the book and the author, and if you want, I'll even send you a link as well of where to buy it from. But brilliant. So those 3 chapters, fantastic. Then chapter 6, working with animal parts. So this is working with like bones like this. Now this isn't the chapter for everyone. There will be obviously witches out there that choose not to incorporate animal parts and bones and items into their craft, and that is completely up to you guys. No one's telling you have to do it when you work with animal magic. It is a personal choice. However, for those of you out there who do want to work with animal bones, practice osteomancy, use bones like this to create charms to hang in your garden from trees or on the outside of your house, or you want to, you know, create spells from them, put them into pouches and things like that. She talks to you about the use of animal parts as well, and considering as well when you're making spells, not mixing prey and predator items together and why that doesn't work out very well. And again, that was really interesting. And then we end with chapter 7, and this is the most difficult chapter of all to talk about because it's about animal sacrifice, guys. And actually I'm going to read you the disclaimer because I think it's important you understand what she said here. Gone a bit too far there. Here we go. So in 2020, she did include a brand new note here. I have removed a few portions of this chapter which by my current standards are unethical. I am not happy about having them in print for 15 years, but better to change them now than never. So she had removed information from this chapter that she felt should not have been in the book in the first place. And obviously I've not read the original version. This is the updated one, so I have no idea what she removed. Then the disclaimer, she basically just says here, this chapter is included primarily to complete this book as a full topic. So it's kind of like she wants you to understand that she wanted to not exclude anything that technically does fall under animal magic and is included in many practices all around the world. And there are still practices today that practice animal sacrifice and use animal parts in their practice. So she wanted to include the information so that you have all of the information at your disposal. So that's very honourable and very difficult to do because it's not an easy subject to talk about. I take no responsibility for anyone's actions but their own, including any actions perpetually caused by someone reading this chapter. In short, any magician worth their salt can damn well make their own decisions in regards to ethics and actions. It is not my responsibility to make those decisions for you, and rightly so. So, you have the choice, guys. If you do not wish to commit animal sacrifice in your magical practice, then don't. But if it's something that interests you, she talks to you in this chapter about it. She gives you excellent, really good information, and she talks you through some of the practices that still exist out there where animal sacrifice is still a thing. Now, one of the points she makes in that chapter, and again, this is a difficult subject, guys, but I just want to be honest with you about what I read and what I agreed with. So she talks to you about these practices, and she says, now in the movies, you see them grab a chicken, it's stressing, it's flapping around, it's scared, you know, and they're hacking and slashing away, blood goes everywhere, and it's horrific and it's shocking and it's disgusting. That is not how animal sacrifice is performed, nor would you gift to any deity, god or entity or any spirit you're working with a sacrifice in that way. You would never gift it something like that. Now, a animal sacrifice should always be an animal that is fully 100% healthy, should have been cared for throughout its life and, you know, ritually prepared as well. It would be in, you know, it would be happy, in a good state, it would be healthy, it would have been treated like a god in its own right because it's about to be given to something as a gift. So it's got to be in good condition, it's got to be healthy, it's got to have been happy, it's got to have had a good life. It's not going to live in squalor, be unhealthy, deformed, disfigured, harmed in any way. It's not going to have been beaten, tortured or any of those things because that is not what you give someone as a gift. You have to remember when animal sacrifice is performed, it's given as a gift in exchange for something just as valuable. So if you're giving something that, you know, has been beaten, injured, you know, terrified, you know, it's chosen last minute, it's all, you know, it's all going to go wrong for you, isn't it? That is not a gift worthy of a deity or a spirit. And if you're going to go to the level of committing animal sacrifice, your sacrifice must be something you've taken care of. So you would, using the idea of a chicken, you would buy the chicken, you would keep it, you would raise it, you'd probably get eggs from it for a while, you would make sure it's happy, it's healthy, it's well fed, it's in good condition, and it's lived its best life right up until the moment of sacrifice. And then when the sacrifice is executed as part of a ritual, it is done as quickly and as painlessly and cleanly as possible. The animal does not suffer, or suffers as little as possible. That is imperative, and she talks about that in that chapter. So again, not an easy subject to talk about, but I appreciate she's given it, and that she wanted the book to be well-rounded and give you all of the information, because there are people out there that might consider doing that as part of their practice, and hey, each to their own. And she didn't want to disclude them or have them go, well, I would have liked that information and it hasn't been given. Now I've got to go out and find it somewhere else, and I've got to continue my search. So I see where she's coming from with that chapter and why she kept it. I would have liked to have known what she removed, but it's probably things that were, in this day and age, too triggering. So that might not be a chapter for everybody. However, I'm glad she included it, and I find it very honourable that she did so, and I liked that she included it. But I will say, as part of a negative, in that chapter, she talks about sacrifice and offerings, but then she didn't give you alternatives. So what I ended up doing was I wrote a list of alternatives instead. So here it is. So at the end, she ends with a note saying, again, I am not in any way responsible for any acts of cruelty performed by those who read this book. Remember, sacrificing animals are well cared for, and their deaths are as painless as possible, usually more humane than that of a cow that became the burger on your plate. Any decisions you make in regards to this or any other issue sought to be made with care and much thought, and is your responsibility alone. So what I ended up doing, because there was space there, was I wrote down alternatives that you can consider instead of animal sacrifice to your deity or spirit or ally that you're working with. So some of them is time. I mean, time and energy, dedicating, to your shrine, the temple, the place of worship where you are honouring that being, that is also very sacred. Any kind of beverage, so wine, water and milk, fruit, meats and flowers are always common ones that we see. Incense as well. And then if you want to do something a bit more outside the box, singing, dancing, chanting and drumming are also very well accepted by deities, and they offer up your energy as well. And actually at the point of climax in the ritual dance, you release your energy and say, this is in dedication to my deity, or as a sacrifice, I'm sacrificing my energy and my sweat, and my movement into this spell and ritual. As I mentioned, incense. I have wrote blood on here as well, but the reason I put that is because if you don't want to actually commit animal sacrifice as part of a spell or ritual, say for example the spell calls for working with a cow, you could buy a steak of beef and then drain off the blood from it and include the blood as an alternative. Obviously the animal has not been harmed in you doing that. You haven't personally done that, but you can still incorporate the blood in your practice and use it in your spell work. You can also use your own blood as well. You can use a single drop, and I'm specifying that very clearly, guys. Please do not do what the movies do, slash at your wrists, your hands, or any of that. You should not be doing that. If you do offer your blood, ladies, you can offer your moon blood from your periods, or for anyone else, you can use a lassiter that you use when you're diabetic to prick your finger and use a single drop of blood. That is all it takes, guys. A single drop is a massive honour to a deity, and they will always accept that, and they will be eternally grateful, because you're sacrificing your very essence, your life blood, to them as an offering. That is very, very sacred, and it takes a single drop, guys. One of the ways that I like to do that is I like to print off the sigil or the seal or something that symbolises that deity, and then when I prick my finger, I will smear my blood over it and try and activate the sigil. Then I'll burn it ritually to the deity as my sacrifice, so it's not lying around, it's not toxic in any way, because you have to remember blood is a biohazard when left exposed. So I'll only place it on the altar for about an hour or so while I'm doing that ritual working, and then when I come to close up and I'm making sure I'm doing all my sacrifices and offerings to whatever I'm working with, I will then burn it, because at that point I don't want it left on the altar exposed, because it has my DNA on it. An alternative to using blood is using beetroot juice, and you can ritually bless it to pretend synthetically to be blood. Other forms of offerings can be poems and prayers, money, perfumes and jewellery. Sex and orgasms can be used as well, guys, to certain deities. Taking care of a sacred animal that is sacred to that deity, and donations to charities who take care of animals and, you know, different special creatures that are sacred to your deity is also well received. So they're all alternatives, and I just wanted to add that in as well. You'll see that I've added footnotes into this book as I've gone on, so little notes. So here I've made some corrections to her work. Another thing I did, what did I do? Try this exercise. So that was just a reminder to myself. So you can see where I have added in some notes here where she talks about familiars. As I said, pets are not a familiar. I made that clear, and that's something that she claims in her book, which is incorrect, as we know. So I kind of added in my own notes and information, reminders and things. Overall, my opinion on this book, I would score it as 6.5 out of 10. It's a great starting point for animal magic, but please ignore the chapter on familiars because it's utter rubbish. As long as you ignore that, the rest of the information is great. There's some golden nuggets of information in here, and it's a really good book to get you started. My personal opinion is a better book that you can read, or books in general, because there's quite a few of them. Any books by Ted Andrews. He went into great detail. He has a whole book on shapeshifting that's massive, and then he has a really good one called Animals Speak, and that goes into great detail about working with animals and totems and spirits and all the different ways that you can work with them. And he even gives you rituals and chants to do with them, and some exercises to get into the mind and the mentality of the animal in order to connect to it on a deeper level. So his books are absolutely fantastic. This is a great starter book, as I say, but it is a self-published. There's a lot of mistakes in it, and there's a lot of things that I thought really didn't need to be in there or could have been worded better or differently, and I would have liked her to have properly updated the book, removing all of the toxic terminology. One last thing I do want to say about this book as well, two things actually, is she talks about, where she's obviously updated the book to correct the terminology, and she did that a lot with tribes and different tribal cultures, so shamanism, totems, working with animal spirits. There was some terminology she used there that was incorrect, and she apologized a lot for that and corrected that. However, there was one chapter where she talked about the chakras and connecting animal totems that you permanently have in your life to the chakras, but she didn't seem to correct herself or apologize for using chakras in her book, which, as we know, chakras come from Indian religions and spiritual paths. They're not part of witchcraft. You can use the chakras, it's open to do so. However, if you don't fully understand them, they should not be used. And the way she used them in this book, in my opinion, she did not fully understand them, so therefore they should not be in this book. One of the things that I did instead, from a witch's perspective, was where she used chakras, I changed that for the 3 cauldrons of witchcraft, which are the power centers of a witch. And then instead of using 8 animal permanent totems, like she said, I made it into 9 because of the soul animal that I mentioned earlier, so mine being the wolf. So I made that obviously my leader, my most powerful animal ally. So with the cauldrons, you obviously have 3 of them. You can break them down into having 3 animals per cauldron, so there's your 9 that I was talking about. And because each cauldron represents a different aspect, energy or power, you can then further break that down into what they represent, and it's easy to do so, guys. And then the last thing I want to mention is she gives a really excellent technique using an animal tarot deck and how to identify your animal allies, which was wonderful, and I'm going to do a separate video on that. So as I say, 6.5 out of 10 from me. Not a bad book overall, but there are better ones out there. So would I recommend this to a beginner? Yes, so long as you ignore the chapter on familiars. Would I recommend it to an advanced practitioner? Probably not. I think it's too basic. I do think there's things in it that you'll find quite boring. There's terminology in it which is incorrect, which most practitioners will find irritating. So bear that in mind, guys. So thank you very much for watching right till the end. I do hope you enjoyed this review. If you did, please give me a thumbs up and click the bell so YouTube will tell you when my next video comes out. If you'd like to offer light, love and support to my channel, you can do that through Patreon or my Amazon wishlist. If you'd like to contact me for spells, rituals, healing or divination, you can do that through Facebook, Twitter, Instagram or via email. All the links are provided. If you have any comments or questions, please go ahead and leave me a comment and I'll get to it as soon as I can. I do check every single day. Thank you very much for your support, guys. guys, and watch until the end. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you soon. Blessed be.